Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here and you feel like you got a little bit of that common sense that's not so common, go ahead and hit that subscribe or like button. And if you don't, common sense is a disease that is highly contagious. So if you just hit that subscribe button or hit that like button, you will catch it. I promise, okay? And today on my channel, we're going to get into pending laws in Ohio. Because some of the most laws I saw had me concerned, okay? They had me concerned, I'll just admit it, all right? But before we get any deeper, remember, I don't have any law training and I don't have any law degree, so don't come for me. But before we get deeper, first and foremost, my name is Key, and this is What's the Key?
For me, break, for me, break the body for me.
All right, y'all, so y'all see the new plant here, okay? I put Candy here, and I called her Candy, my little bamboo, because it reminds me of a little stripper pole and this little curvy, little swirly Candy. That's where her name comes from, okay? Candy is here because Candy is going to get repotted soon, and what I'm going to do is put her back in water. This plant has inspired me to put my plants, the ones that can, in water, okay? We're going to put her in some water and rocks. This area got damaged when I moved. So we're gonna cut it here or about here and then cut up here and see if I can propagate the top and then keep the bottom alive as well while getting out that damaged section and those damaged leaves. But that's why we got Candy next to us today. As long as her and Carisha don't start jumping me right here, you know, we'll keep her in the video for the day. Because you're still beautiful, Candy, although you look slightly neglected right now.
She looks beautiful,
She's doing the best she can, Seuss.
All right, let's get into it. As always, if you see me looking to the right, I'm looking at my notes, and any bell you're hearing is my cat City doing kitty things. The pending bills in Ohio. Now, these are really not in any particular order. I just randomly was going through, saw ones I liked, clicked on them. Here we are. First bill, Senate Bill 8, and it prohibits a public employer from providing paid leave or compensation for a public employee to engage in union activities. No public employer shall provide or agree in a contract, paid leave, or any other compensation for the following activities: political activities formed by or on behalf of an employee organization that involve advocating for the election or defeat of any political candidate; lobbying activities performed by or on behalf of employee organizations that involve attempting to influence the passage or defeat of federal or state legislation, local ordinances, or any ballot measure. So y'all, union contracts usually have what they call release time, where they can attend union meetings, grievance hearings, or negotiations without using any of their personal time. So Representative Stephen Huffman, and I'm going to put his picture here because if you don't vote for anybody next year, Ohio, if you leave anybody off, leave off Huffman.
I ain't gonna lie, me too. When I went on her page and seen her pictures, I said, oh, jump scare.
You'll see why as we get further down. He's very much giving me, I want to try to get my name out there or accomplish for something regardless of how just crazy I sound or etc. In my personal opinion.
That's my opinion!
But Huffman, who introduced this bill, said that any taxes for public employees should benefit public good and not a private entity. I would like to argue that unions do benefit the public good. A lot of people who have a job that work in a union always seem to be happy to be working there. To me, I remember the job I had with a union representative.
Back in my day.
Anytime you got called down, any issue, I loved having the union representative with me, sitting there, reminding me of things I can and cannot say. Okay? Honestly, what I think it is I think that maybe a lot of unions are more democratic.
Makes sense to me.
And the Republicans aren't getting the votes from the unions. They're not pushing Republican candidates. So that is why Mr. Stephen Huffman wants to go ahead and get rid of the paid leave for the public employers involved for any union activities. But with that being said, the Ohio Constitution does prohibit using any public funds for private entities. So in that case, if that is kind of what is happening, what is being seen, then I feel like he does have a case because it is technically a private entity, and public funds, the taxpayer monies that is paying for these public jobs, are going towards them. And I believe in the article I read, they said about $1.1 million of taxpayers' revenue went into about 40,000 hours of that release time for public employers to be involved in union activities. So this is the way that Republican Huffman is trying to cut the budget, I believe. Now, tomorrow, the president of the Ohio Education Association believes This is a way to silence public employees and that no employer agrees to it unless they want to, and that is very true. Under union contracts, they go through no negotiations. No public employer would agree to it unless they wanted that to be part of the contract. So I believe he does have a point with that. And I do believe it's a way to silence public employees. You should hear from your public employees. Those would be the ones that Huffman would be trying to silence, because if they're being treated poorly by the actual government, and taxpayers will sympathize with them a little bit more with their money going towards them and etc. So yeah, I see Huffman's pushback. I don't understand it. Okay, but moving on. House Bill 16. This will prohibit certain restrictions on the display of political yard signs. Now, there can still be rules, regulations, and agreements that can reasonably restrict the time they can be displayed. And I also believe the size of the signs. I believe if you're under any like HOA or any contract like that, then if they have any restrictions on it, they're allowed to have that restrictions because you signed into it. Now, they cannot prohibit the display or size 30 days leading up to the election as long as it's on that person's property. So as long as it's on the property that they're paying taxes for, they can put as big as signs they want 30 days up to election. So if they want to get a big old blow up for their candidate, they're allowed to do that for the elections. But before that, the size and time for the signs can be restricted, which is wild that you would put a time restriction, unless I'm just thinking of days, and I'm thinking of time of day. But no, they're probably talking about maybe days out of the year. And I still don't think that's fair. Once you have your own property, okay, I don't feel like there should be any restrictions. I understand some people like HOAs because they like neatness, and what it is you want to control everybody else's neatness, because you could have your yard completely neat without the rest of your neighborhood looking that same exact way. I can't stand HOAs and the ideas of HOAs. I remember when I knew someone living in there, they were simply just trying to build a gate, and they had to get approval on whether the gate can open out. And they said, no, the gate can't open out. Like, that's stupid. You're telling them they can't have a gate that opens out into the yard as into the side yard. Like, I don't like HOAs. I don't like the restrictions. I do feel like it's a bunch of Karens and Aubreys, Karens for the most part, who thinks their standard is best and feel like everybody should follow it. That's how I see HOAs. Moving on. Now, Senate Bill 59. It exempts firearms and ammunition from sales and use tax, the sale of certain firearms and ammunition, and to authorize refundable tax credits for small arms and manufacturing projects, and they can receive no more than 10 million of credits in a fiscal year. Okay, Ohio, I see y'all be trying to become a small arms manufacturer. If y'all want to, now listen, back when I was in middle school,
Back in my day,
I believe it was my 7th grade or 8th grade science teacher told me that if it ever came to anybody wanting to attack the U.S., Chicago, or if you know where the headquarters of Caterpillar is, that's where I grew up, would be the places attacked, and both of those locations are in Illinois. And the reason they would be attacked is because Caterpillar is a huge manufacturer, so they would be producing arms and things like that. Ohio, by all means, if y'all want to take some of the stress off Illinois in the major cities, okay, because I don't even think Cleveland, Ohio would have even been thought of. But if y'all want to take the stress off everybody else and become a target, by all means, by all means. My thing is, but exempt for firearms and ammunition from sales and use tax, where y'all think y'all gonna get that money from? Y'all are complaining about 1.1 million being spent on union workers, but at the same time want firearms and ammunition to be exempt from sales, and like that doesn't even make sense. And then give tax credits to people who have small arms and manufacturing projects. How are those the people that get the tax breaks? Ohio.
I need an answer ASAP. Give me an answer. Ow.
Y'all not sounding very safe. Now, this next one is the Senate Concurrent Resolution, or SCR1, and this is directing the Secretary of Homeland Security to elicit fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction. Now, according to the CDC, fentanyl was the #1 cause of death for adults between the ages of 18 and 45. 78% of Ohio's drug overdoses were due to fentanyl. So, I ain't mad at it. Yeah, honestly, I don't have to complain about making it a weapon of mass destruction. It is a very, very deadly drug. It is hitting all kinds of states. And to be honest, it's hitting a lot of Republican states. as quiet as it kept, Utah is another state that is getting hit by fentanyl.
I don't want to hear that. Because first of all, how do you know? How do you know that that's true? How do you know that?
But it is countrywide, so I don't see the problem with that. It is causing a lot of deaths. It's becoming in drugs that people have been using for years. Like in some cases, you could end up getting even just marijuana off the streets, and then they can have fentanyl in it. So yeah, it is causing a big problem. But if it should be doing anything, I think it should be scaring people off buying drugs. One, off the street, and then two, those real illegal harsh drugs. If anything, I would think it would scare you away from using it, but not. I don't have any problem with that becoming a weapon of mass destruction. It seemed a little like, but you know, you see Ohio. Now, Senate Bill 55. This bill is a law that I know some states have, and I can't stand it because it just screams ignorant.
It's almost hurtful to me to watch her be so dumb.
This regards operating under the influence of marijuana and a concentration of at least 25 nanograms of THC in the urine, or 2 but not less than 5 per millimeter of blood would constitute you as driving under the influence of marijuana. Now, the ignorance of this, we all know you can still have marijuana in your bloodstream, have that THC in your bloodstream, and be nowhere near high and smoked it 5 days ago. They're trying to make it a law that you can still get arrested for it just for it being in your system, and I think that's real stupid.
I said what I said.
I do. I just think it's real stupid. They have not come up with a test yet, as far as I know, to test for immediate high on being on marijuana. You can't just lock up people just because they have it in their system, just because y'all just know people drive that way and y'all need to find a way to lock them up. Let's be real here. There are professionals coming out and saying how dumb these laws are, from scientists to psychologists to people who just, I can't even think of the profession, but the people who are just in that field in general. So I'm really not getting it. I'm really not getting it. I'm not getting any of the states that's doing it. I'm not understanding how Ohio ignorantly, after all the time that we've had with marijuana being legal in states, and the studies have coming out and saying these are ineffective ways to test people to see if they were high while driving, is still in 2025 or 2026 trying to push that as a law. And I'm gonna check for Huffman's name on that bill too.
All right, y'all. So Huffman wasn't on there, but we have Nathan H. Manning here, who was the solo sponsor, right, as of right now, of this bill. Okay, back into it.
Senate Bill 30. Now, this requires retail merchants to give people the option to pay in cash. They do have exceptions for places. For the most part, they're requiring that people have the option to pay in cash. They also are requiring that they have no fees on converting cash to a prepaid card, and that minimum deposit of $5 is not required for the prepaid cards. I don't see a problem with that bill. It's crazy that they had to make a law to tell you how to allow people to pay with cash. If it is a legal form of payment in the United States, you should be allowed to pay for it with it. I don't understand how so many businesses had to be putting restrictions on it to the point that Ohio had to step in and be like, hey, people can pay with cash. It's okay. Heck, some people budget better with cash. I do. I budget better with cash than swiping my card. Unless I put a certain amount of money on one of my cards, like, okay, that's my limit. Next bill, Senate Bill 53, and this regards civil actions for vandalism or riot activity injuries, and it's going to allow any person who suffers an injury due to those to be able to file a lawsuit. Now, the part of this bill that made me roll my eyes is the part that says that no government official can stop a law enforcement agency or a peace officer from detaining individuals involved in a riot or vandalism. Now, define a riot. Because I know specifically a lot of peaceful protests for the Black community have been deemed riots that weren't riots. But then you had it when, who was it in Chicago? Was it the White Sox? Cubs?
Y'all, it was actually the Blackhawks when they won the Stanley Cup. And what's crazy is even in this article, they described them as throwing glass bottles at police officers, but still said it was just a few rowdy fans in the midst of a celebration. Crazy.
They tore up the city? If I remember that story correctly, but that wasn't deemed a riot, right? It was deemed a wild celebration, etc. Maybe because it was white people instead of a bunch of black people. But yeah, that's the part of law I don't like. So I feel like law enforcement will be out there detaining people who are part of peaceful protest and not actual riots. Next bill. House Bill 29 regards inmates' access to feminine hygiene products and them being able to shower during that time. And I think it's a little crazy. Just a little crazy. They got to put a law in place because y'all probably were treating these women like ish on their cycles. And this law is going to protect them from the denial of hygiene products, except when experiencing an emergency. So maybe they say, oh, I just ran out, but maybe there's a riot or something going on in the cells and everybody has to be on lockdown and etc. And even in that case, I feel like it's dumb to deny them, because even if you got to lock them in their cell, somebody can, as they're running around doing whatever, doing checks, take the time to throw them a tampon. But I guess another fear they could have is they pop open that door. I don't know about adult prisons. I don't know if they have little chutes, because they could just pop it open in little chutes. But they do that, and then they got a problem with putting that incarcerated person back up or in their door, and it's creating another distraction, and et cetera, et cetera. So I get it in that point of when experiencing an emergency, but it shouldn't be that hard to throw somebody a tampon. Now, it also states that women who are on their periods will get at least one hot water shower a day. Y'all, wow, that's crazy. Y'all's making them shower in cold water. And it protects them from the denial based on sex. So I'm guessing that it has to do with trans men having access to the tampons and stuff as well. As you know, they're like, well, if you call yourself a man, then you don't need a tampon back. Give them the shit.
I lied.
Moving on, next bill. House Bill 5. And this is to enact the Repeat Offender Act. And this act will create a repeat offender classification, create and modify certain firearm specifications, create the penalties for certain firearms offenses and specifications, broaden the scope of relief from firearms disability, and to modify the sealing procedure for misdemeanors and fourth-degree felonies. Now, the only thing that had me looking at this act was the broaden the scope from relief from firearms disability. And I looked at it this way. For firearms disability, I'm guessing felons. I'm wondering if they're putting something in place to allow maybe felons to get their firearm rights back. And maybe looking at certain crimes that they initially were taking away the firearms from or the firearm rights for, and then realize later on, okay, it doesn't necessarily mean their firearm rights need to be taken away. So they're putting them or taking them off the list or adding them to a list of crimes that will not have their firearm rights taken away. So that's kind of how I looked at it. I don't ever see a problem with when you do something more than once, they increasing the penalty for it. Because I feel like that's the only way you can get some people to stop in some cases. So I don't have any problem with that. But the firearms disability did have me looking at it like, are they trying to help their felons get more firearm rights, or people who commit certain crimes get their firearm rights back? Because that's what I see. That's what I hear when I see firearm disability, is your inability to access a firearm. Now, for these next two bills, House Bill 3 and Senate Bill 62, I had to look this up. And I had to, because I'm like, if they're enacting this, both the House and the Senate, it's because it's a big problem. And I bet I can find a news article on it, and I did. These bills are pending to enact the School Bus Safety Act. And it's going to enhance safety features on the bus and have the Department of Education create a grant program for it. These buses will have inspections and will be required to include seatbelts, lights, those light up crossing signs, light up stop signs, the ones that expand out, and etc. What's crazy is when I thought of this law, I'm thinking of like back when I was in school.
Back in my day.
We had the buses with no seatbelts and stuff. And this is years ago. Let me calm down. This is about over a decade ago. And you're telling me now in 2025, these same buses have not been upgraded to having like seatbelts at the like bare minimum? Because they're putting that in there. That means that their buses are being used without seatbelts. Like, y'all still got them able to just do whatever, jump from seat to seat. I thought y'all would have really upgraded. That's one thing I would have really thought would have been upgraded by now, but it's not. And if I could just add one little recommendation, Ohio, require tinted windows. Let the kids look out, but nobody need to be looking into school buses for any reason. They don't need to see kids doing nothing to them or kids being able to just do things outside the window. We don't need any creepy weirdos looking into the school buses either. I would just recommend adding tinted windows as a safety feature, personally. Now, this article was written January 28th, 3 weeks into this new year, and they have already had 51 school bus crashes.
The woman was too stunned to speak.
Now I'm wondering, this is the bus drivers? I've never known bus drivers to not be safe drivers. Or is this Ohio people driving on the street? And I think in a couple bills when we get down, we're going to figure out it's Ohio people. It is not the bus drivers. So Ohio will be a place that if you're from Ohio, you will not be driving me around. I'm thinking of one person right now. They like, I drove you around. I was a good driver. Look, that's probably a 1 in 10 at this point for Ohio, from what I'm seeing. 51 school bus crashes is crazy, and I guarantee that's from people just being impatient. When the bus stops in Illinois, I don't know what law we had in place, but when that stop sign, pew, I think you get arrested for it. When that stop sign went out, you stopped. And you didn't go again until the stop sign flipped itself back. Y'all don't care about y'all children in Ohio?
Stop acting like a fucking hooligan.
It seems to me like y'all don't care about y'all children in Ohio. Y'all don't care about their safety. I'm just saying from what I'm seeing. So they're raising the fine to $1,000. And then if you're a repeat offender, you're going to have your license suspended, a $2,000 fine, and have to take a mandatory safety course. And I say do it. The first one should be $2,000. Second one, make it $4,000. And have their license suspended for a minimum of 3 years. You don't need to be driving if you can't figure out, after you've already had to pay a high fine, that you can't pass the stop sign. And to be honest, I remember as a child, youth that had to walk across the street, across a busy street. And the buses were like, you would see some bus drivers get mad and honk if somebody just drove past. But that's because children were getting hit by cars. Yeah, it was crazy. So I had to become an LLM too, because people don't have the common sense to stop when they see a stop sign. But I like the act. I don't see an issue with it. Maybe they should have put it in a long time ago. If we already 3 weeks in 2025 and y'all got 51 school bus crashes, I don't even want to look up the numbers for the previous years. 2023 or 2024 had to be crazy. Next bill, Senate Bill 56, and this revises the medical and adult use marijuana laws. And this is when we see Stephen Huffman again.
A straight white man.
He wants to amend this bill that Ohio's voters approved for by 57%. That is almost like saying, hey, the voters aren't smart enough to make their own decisions. Forget what they're saying. We're still going to change this. We can't accept the fact that our people in our state that we represent, that fucking pay our salary,
Be nice. I'm finding it.
want something that we don't want in place. That is what Stephen Huffman is getting. Stephen Huffman is that mediocre that just really, really feels like he has to get his name out there. I stand by what I say.
Nah, first of all, what the fuck you gonna do? Punch me with an emoji? Like, bitch, y'all don't scare me the fuck.
They tried to do this before, but it received scrutiny for everybody from the House because it's a Senate bill. From the House, from the voters, everybody. Now, they want to raise the taxes. They want a cap on the total number of retailers, and they want a restriction on home growing plants. And they also want new penalties for adults who share their cannabis, which have me looking like,
No.
what? Because you telling me if I invite somebody to my house right now, it's a penalty in Ohio to can share cannabis? I can see somebody underage, but another consumer, y'all tripping in Ohio. Yes, and that is Stephen Huffman. We saw his picture at the beginning. Now, Deputy Director Paul Armentano expressed concerns about the lawmakers' unwillingness to accept the marijuana legalization as a disturbing trend. There are 2 other states. I know Mississippi was a state that they had to file petitions, and I can't think of the other one, but you had it in Nebraska, where 70% of their voters, 70% in Nebraska voted to have marijuana legal. And you have the 30% following multiple lawsuits trying to stop it and get it banned and get like high restrictions on it and everything. Why? Just learn to live with it. How can y'all be so okay with alcohol? Which we haven't seen much data on crime being committed with marijuana. When you have somebody high in the bar, they're not fighting in the bar as if somebody who gets drunk off alcohol.
Hey y'all, editing key here. Now that I think about it, if a high person gets as high as a drunk person gets drunk to start fighting, they're 9 times out of 10 just gonna fall asleep in that bar.
I don't get it. I don't get it. Your state voted for it. Get over it. especially in Nebraska, because 70%, you don't get what, y'all need these privileged, entitled people to realize you don't get what you want and everything can't be to what you feel like is the standard. Your standard, because you think your standard of how things should be is the best. Moving on. Now, Senate Bill 3 had me looking sideways, all right? Now, my problem with this is they want a flat rate on the state income tax of 2.75%. 2.75% is usually for people who make around $27,000 to $102,000 a year. But now you want everybody to have that tax rate. So you want from the poorest to the richest to have the same tax rate. And I don't understand why there are so many brainwashed people who think the rich should be taxed less or taxed the same as everybody else. I don't know how so many people became brainwashed to thinking there is supposed to be this hierarchy and such a huge split with people in people's income to the point that some people can't even survive. You just got to work harder. How do they have y'all so brainwashed? Now I'm going on a rant. But how do y'all have y'all so brainwashed to the point that y'all believe that inflation is due to taxes and insurance companies and everything but the CEOs and people in higher ups being greedy, wanting more money, okay? Like I said before, they don't need 5 to 10 houses. They don't need to own 30 apartment buildings. That entity doesn't need to own 30, 40, 50 apartment buildings. He doesn't need to fly on a private jet every time he goes somewhere. He doesn't need all the vacation houses. They really got y'all brainwashed to the point that y'all believe that 1% deserves to have all that while people are struggling. Think that inflation is nothing more than just greed. I think people forget that at one point the grocery store said, yeah, we'll cut it. We'll cut down we can cut down on the prices by like 30%.
What the fuck?
We don't need billionaires. And once y'all get that through y'all head that it's not necessary to have billionaires, hell, not even millionaires in most cases, then it would make sense. I don't understand how you don't want everybody around you to be living comfortably as long as they're providing that 40-hour work week and being a good citizen. I'm telling you, you have people that are good citizens, 40-hour work weeks, they can barely survive.
Does that sound like it makes sense? Does it sound like it makes sense?
And you wonder why they turn to illegal activities. But yes, I remember I was reading an article that stated, I think he asked a direct question to, can't even remember who it was, the lawmaker, and was like, so how do you feel about having the 80% cover most of the taxes of the 20% or something like that? And that's just what it is. You're giving a tax break to the 20%. That's what you're doing. You're giving a tax break to the 20% and in some cases raising it for people who are, if you're making already at $27,000 a year, I can't believe they're taking that. Because that's not even survivable in 2025. Next bill, Senate Bill 16, and it establishes road rules around distressed stationary vehicles. And this is when I was like, we're going to get to the point that's going to let you know that Ohio just can't drive.
That's my opinion!
Ohio can't drive. Y'all don't even know what to do when a distressed stationary vehicle's on the road. They got to create laws in place. They're literally in this basically telling people common sense things to do when a vehicle is distressed. Y'all get in that many accidents in Ohio that they have to come up with a law to help everybody out. Like, this is what y'all need to do when there's a distressed vehicle. Yeah, I can't trust y'all. I can't drive out there. I don't want to be on the road. I don't want to be on the road. I want to Lyft driver. I'll walk. I'll figure it out. House Bill 26, and this is a Protecting Ohio Committees Act. All right? Now, they're going to require, y'all see my side eye, they're going to require state and local authorities to cooperate with the federal government in the enforcement of immigration laws to prescribe funding reductions for noncompliance and declare it as an emergency. Now, originally, immigrants and immigration laws was in this act as a protected community and things like that. So law enforcement could reject having to arrest them and etc. They went through this bill and literally crossed out immigrants and immigration laws throughout the entire bill.
I mean, it's just bullshit.
Ohio. Okay? It ain't Chicago from what I see. Although this is the lawmakers, it's a pending bill, we don't know what the people could be doing. But the lawmakers are trying to be a-holes. So I really hope the people are doing more over there. Oh, did y'all hear about in Chicago that when ICE tried to go into Chicago schools, they stopped them? That's what I'm hoping the people are doing in Ohio, because the lawmakers are making them cooperate with the federal government, which is AKA cooperating with the tyrant, the felon that we have up there. Okay, and I don't think you should be taking all your ideas from a felon, especially when a lot of these states have restrictions for felons because they see felons as bad people or unable to be rehabilitated fully. You know, just my opinion. Moving on, Senate Bill 38. It's going to establish liability for certain food-related injuries. You can bring civil actions against the different manufacturers, entities, and corporations for food. And there's not a lot written in this bill, but they did say that you would have to reasonably assume the food would not cause any harm. So you can't look at a piece of moldy food, eat it, and be like, oh my God, I got sick of the food that I saw had mold on it, that I saw had a problem with it. I still ate that burger even though it was bleeding. And they get mad. Last bill, this is House Bill 20. House Bill 20 prohibits harassing or impeding of an emergency service responder. And I can't remember the state before, well, we had a state that had to put the same thing in place. And when I said before then, I'm going to say it again. It is needed. It is needed. The emergency service responder has the first initial warning and tell them they have to be at least 14 feet away. And then also, if they continue to violate that, it's going to be a misdemeanor in the first degree. Like I said, it is needed. I don't know how some of y'all think that grabbing on to first responders is going to somehow allow us the freedom to help the person in need. Or you coming up as a nosy neighbor asking the police officer 30 questions about something they trying to figure out their dang selves. And then, like I said, in those cases, people could really just be doing it as a distraction, helping somebody get away. So now they're causing a nuisance and et cetera, et cetera. But I don't see a problem with that law. But y'all, that brings us to the end of the video. Don't forget to hit that like button if you have not already. And let me know in the comments, what are y'all thinking about Ohio state law? I think the Ohio voters need to be looking. They need to be looking. And I think Stephen Huffman doesn't need to be voted for, again, my personal opinion. And I'm allowed to have it. Okay? But that's all I have. Let me know y'all thoughts in the comments. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
For me, break, for me, break the body for me.